What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL video. In this video, I'm going to break down the top 5 destinations where Antonio Brown could be heading this offseason. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have to trade him. Antonio Brown has asked for a trade out of Pittsburgh. He's not going to play there any longer. He's had it. They've had it. I know that the Pittsburgh Steelers have more leverage in this situation, but Antonio Brown won't be back. So where are the 5 places that Pittsburgh could potentially trade him to? Let's break it down. But before I do, hit that like button, subscribe to The Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this, and comment below your opinion. Do you think your favorite team is going to go after Antonio Brown? Where is the most logical destination for Antonio Brown? And do you agree with any of these 5 destinations? Let's start off at number 5, the Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Raiders, they have tons of picks, okay? Tons of first-round picks. They have a lot that they could potentially maneuver. They could potentially go after a big name like Antonio Brown. We know that John Gruden doesn't mind going after a big name, especially at the wide receiver position. Think back to his Oakland days with Tim Brown and bringing in Jerry Rice and having all these big name receivers. He's also made trades for guys like Joey Galloway in the past, had them on his team, and he signed Jordy Nelson last offseason. So there's been a lot of big name type of wide receivers on John Gruden's teams of the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders did make a move for Antonio Brown. You also have to think that the Oakland Raiders are going to be moving to Las Vegas very soon. And in Las Vegas, you need to be able to sell tickets. Now, the Raiders are a very popular NFL franchise, but that's not going to get it done alone. You're going to have to bring in star power. When you look at the Raiders roster right now, you don't really have that star power. Antonio Brown might be that star big enough to bring in fans to watch their games in Vegas. Also, they don't really have any weapons. Looking at it right now, Jared Cook is looking like a free agent and he might go somewhere else. He's a pretty good tight end, but that was their best weapon from last season. Marshawn Lynch is also a free agent and he's their running back from last season. Derek Carr has nobody really to throw the ball to other than an old Jordy Nelson. So you're looking at potentially significantly upgrading not only your star power, but your play on the field with trading for Antonio Brown. The Oakland Raiders also have the 6th most cap space in the NFL to make this move and have enough cap space to also go out there and make a number of other moves potentially on the defensive side of the football. The only issue here with the Raiders is I think they might want to stay young, and the reason why they got those draft picks may be to actually use those draft picks. So that would be the reason why the Raiders are looking to acquire somebody like Antonio Brown. At number 4, the New York Jets. The New York Jets have the 2nd most cap space in the NFL, $95 million at their disposal. We've heard the rumors that the Jets may go out there and sign a guy like Le'Veon Bell, also a Pittsburgh Steeler of the past, or they could potentially go after another former Pittsburgh Steeler, or going to be former Pittsburgh Steeler, in Antonio Brown. Look at it this way. Sam Darnold, he is the franchise. He is the face of the franchise, and he's the franchise, what they're invested in going forward. They need a receiver to be able to make that happen. They need to be able to have a weapon that Sam Darnold can trust, can go to as a young quarterback, and he's going to make plays for him. When you're looking at this offense right now, nobody scares you. Enunwa is their best receiver, and he is average. And then you're looking at Curse, who is, I would say, not even as good as Enunwa, and Robbie Anderson is a free agent, so you don't really have receivers. And if you could name their tight end, let me know. It's just like the Jets don't have any receiving options that really scare a defense. By bringing in Antonio Brown, it significantly helps Sam Darnold and his development as a quarterback, which again, they're invested in. And also you think about who their new head coach is. It's no longer a defensive coach, it's an offensive coach. They now have Adam Gase, who's their offensive coach. He's going to want to have some weapons to work with. And I think by having Antonio Brown there, he can work with him, get him open, you know, and all that sort of fun stuff. On the other side of this, you also look at Adam Gase as a guy who, let's be honest, he is a second chance head coach. When you're a first time head coach, you kind of have that ability to learn on the job, but in your second time, you're expected to know all those things and be mistake-free the second time around. That means that Gase could potentially only have 1 or 2 seasons to actually prove himself with Sam Darnold and the New York Jets organization. So the Jets have the money, the Jets have the quarterback in need of a target, and they have a coach who's desperate to win right now. At number 3, the Green Bay Packers. This might surprise a lot of people, but I actually think the Packers are this team that I'm really intrigued to see if they do make a move on Antonio Brown, because they have a lot of the different trends that could tell me that they could go after a guy like Antonio Brown. Okay, so the Packers aren't a team that are having to deal with a lot of turnover. A lot of the reasons why I counted out a number of teams that I really looked at for this list was the turnover on their roster going into free agency. An example would be the Carolina Panthers, a team that's been rumored but has a lot of turnover on their roster along the offensive line and the defense that really doesn't make it logical for them to go out there and spend a ton of money on a receiver. But the Green Bay Packers don't have a lot of turnover on their roster. Most of their defense is young and is solidified. Their offensive line is there, full intact. They have a couple of receivers that are there. Young Davante Adams is there and signed. They have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback, and they'll figure that out. And they have their running backs. So they really don't have anyone to kind of go out there and re-sign, to be honest. I mean, they're going to let go of Clay Matthews, which, thank God, finally they can let go of him. Randall Cobb, okay, he's been overpaid for seasons now, and they'll probably let him go as well. They'll have even more cap space to work with, currently working at a good amount of cap space with $35 million. That's the 14th most in the NFL. They're getting rid of those contracts. They have that amount of cap space already. Then you look at the fact that we know Aaron Rodgers has pull. Okay, Aaron Rodgers has pull. He wants to bring in a big-time receiver that can help him out. Because when we're looking at Aaron Rodgers, he's really going to Davante Adams and Davante Adams only. They don't have anybody else to really go with at the wide receiver position. When their young guys played last season, I know it was their rookie season, but guys like Valdez-Scantling, they didn't really get it done in their opportunity. So I think Aaron Rodgers is there sitting and saying to the ownership, saying to the GM, I know they don't have an owner, but saying to their GM, okay, we have an opportunity here to get one of the top 10 best receivers in the NFL, and probably top 3 or top 4, and we have that opportunity. So why don't we go out here and get Antonio Brown? We can team him up with Davante Adams, and we might be unstoppable as a passing attack with me at quarterback, Davante Adams, and Antonio Brown at wide receiver. That's going to be very difficult for a lot of teams to defend. You also look at the fact that Matt LaFleur, he is a 3-receiver set heavy offensive coach. We know that Matt LaFleur comes from the tree of Sean McVay. Sean McVay is a heavy 3-receiver set type of offense. So when you're looking at it that way, the Green Bay Packers do need receivers to execute their new offense. And LaFleur knows that he needs the players to execute his offense, and that's going to make him look better in the long run. So I think the Packers are going to try and get a receiver in here, and if they do get a receiver in here, why not make it Antonio Brown? They also have 2 first-round picks that they can maneuver and trade with. They are in a win-now mode. They have Aaron Rodgers. He's only getting older, and they know that they need to execute now. They need to make that window as wide as possible, and by bringing Antonio Brown in, it's going to help Aaron Rodgers win, and that's going to help the Packers be happy. At number 2, the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the Colts are a team with the most cap space in the entire NFL. It's time to win now if you're the Indianapolis Colts. You can have one big offseason. You just made the playoffs. You just went to the divisional round. You have Andrew Luck. He's signed. You have your coach, Frank Reich. You have your offensive line intact. Finally, you have T.Y. Hilton. You had a defense that performed very well. Darius Leonard, a young stud. You need to win now. You have that $109 million at your disposal. You need to go out there, probably sign a couple guys on defense, and you need a receiver. When you look at the Colts and their top needs, they probably need a pass rusher. They probably need a couple guys in the secondary, but you can find those guys on minimal contracts. On offense, you need a big-time receiver. You need somebody that can go on the opposite side of T.Y. Hilton, take attention away from him, and be a guy that can make plays. So with T.Y. Hilton, Antonio Brown, Andrew Luck, and Eric Ebron on offense, with that offensive line, no matter who your running back is, they could just stay with Marlon Mack, who's a pretty solid running back. Defensively, you upgrade your secondary, maybe add a corner, add a safety, and then you grab a pass rusher on the market, a big one, maybe like a D Ford, maybe like a Trey Flowers, a Jadeveon Clowney, somebody like that, and you're already putting yourself right there in terms of Super Bowl chances. If they go get Antonio Brown and a guy on defense with the big name, they could potentially be the team in the AFC to go to the Super Bowl and even win the Super Bowl. They have an elite quarterback. They have the coach. They have everything there. They're thin at wide receiver. Upgrade your wide receiver position with Antonio Brown, and you're looking primed for a Super Bowl opportunity. At number 1, the San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers would maximize what Antonio Brown is as a player, which would mean that they would get the most out of Antonio Brown, which would mean it would be the best for them to trade for him. They have the 7th most cap space, $60 million to work with. They have the quarterback of the future, Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a good leader. He's well respected. He's a charming, charismatic guy. They have a young head coach who's an extremely intelligent offensive coach who can get the best out of an Antonio Brown, who Antonio Brown would really respect, who Kyle Shanahan can relate to in the fact that Kyle Shanahan used to play receiver and he knows what it's like to be a receiver at the University of Texas. So there are those connections. I think Antonio Brown would get along well with Jimmy Garoppolo. And then you're looking at the locker room status of, okay, your whole concern with Antonio Brown is being a cancer. He's not going to be a cancer in a locker room with a guy like Richard Sherman, who's going to make sure that Antonio Brown's not going to be a cancer. And Antonio Brown can relate to a lot of these personalities. I think he would find friendships with a lot of these guys. You're also looking at on the field, and Goodwin is a solid, speedy receiver who can make plays down the field. Dante Pettis is a very promising young wide receiver. And then you throw Antonio Brown in there. That's arguably the most explosive trio at the wide receiver position in terms of making big plays, along with arguably the best offensive coach in football, one of the best young quarterbacks in football, and a pretty solid offensive line and running game already. Budding star in George Kittle, who just set multiple records at the tight end position. And now you're looking at the San Francisco 49ers being a absolute force in the NFC because they're going to score points and they're going to be a little bit more talented on defense. So for me, the 49ers are the #1 team that I think should go out there and get Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown opens up your offense. The things that Kyle could do with Antonio Brown would be similar to the things he could do with Julio in Atlanta, which would open up the rest of his receivers, which would open up his stretch running game, his zone runs, all that sort of stuff that he loves to do. It would open up George Kittle even more from being double teamed. And this offense would be arguably unstoppable with Antonio Brown. And then defensively, I think they could get away with being good enough, adding another player in free agency. And I think you need to, again, maximize the potential of your quarterback situation, which right now you have Jimmy Garoppolo at a pretty good number. As long as he can stay healthy, and as long as Antonio Brown could come in there and not be an issue, which I don't think he would be, the 49ers would be a great team to watch. My top 5 destinations for Antonio Brown this upcoming offseason in a potential trade. Let me know what you guys think of those destinations. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more, and peace out.